Hi, everybody. Welcome back to a special edition of Stefanie Drysdale's weekly cyber recap with our special guest today, Mr. Spencer Coursen. He's author of The Safety Trap, and boy, does he have some good information for all of us. Miss Stefanie, take it away.
Thank you, Chuck. Spencer, thank you so much for joining us today.
Stefanie, thank you so much for having me. It's a true pleasure to be here.
I loved it. We had a really great conversation on your podcast not very long ago, and there was so much more we could talk about. So I thought that we would just make some time and talk about all things that are going on in the world and all the tie-ins to your book. I just to like put it out there. There's so many books on all kinds of security related things. The way yours was structured, I thought was just so digestible and so easy, and it just flowed, and there was so much helpful information there from, everyone from like the average citizen to, the absolute best protectors. So thank you for sharing that with me.
Oh, thank you. It was a true pleasure. I always kind of frame what I do for a living as helping good people make bad things better. And like I talk about in the book, not all of us will ever know the luxury of having our own security detail, but every single one of us deserves to be protected. And so what I wanted this book to be was a resource guide for how to live your very best life the safest way possible. And I just included, everyday, very real, understandable, easily digestible, very practical recommendations for how to ensure the certainty of safety for not just you, but for your loved ones as well. And, kind of like I do with my podcast, I talk about, here's what happened, here's how it was allowed to happen. And then here are 5 ways to keep that bad thing from happening to you. And, everything's getting back to normal. Travel has resumed. I've actually have a podcast coming out again later today, which is my first one in a couple of weeks. But, we were kind of talking about this offline. In this podcast that comes out today, I was talking about the shooting that took place in Washington, D.C. last week, where the shooting was outside the stadium, but the people who were inside the stadium thought that it was happening inside. And so, when people don't know what to do and they don't have a plan in place and they start just behaving in a way that they think will make them feel safe, that can sometimes, lead to a false sense of security, which actually puts you more at risk. And that's really the overarching framework of the safety trap, is sometimes feeling safe is the most dangerous thing we do, because, while safety is a state of feeling, is an emotion, security is a state of being. And in order to be, truly protected, those two things really do need to be in concert with one another. So thank you so much for your kind words about the book.
No, it was incredibly helpful. And I thought about the situation at the National Stadium when I read your situation for public places and that kind of thing. Additionally, I was thinking about Lala. We're here in Chicago. This weekend is Lollapalooza. We've got a lot of people coming out of quarantine and a lockdown situation. And to just to think about the whole state of the world and how all of this has changed, and everything being so charged and volatile, and people's emotions are very high. Like, what is the best advice you could give someone right now who is going to a situation like that, who wants to stay safe but still have a good time?
Yeah, well, that's great. I'm actually going to be in Chicago next week for a business trip, and I'm actually going to be attending for fun, not actually working for a change, the Lollapalooza event next weekend in Chicago. And so when it comes to staying safe at events like that, I think there are a few different things that everyone can kind of put in place to ensure that they have a great time, but that they also stay safe while being there. And the first thing is to just have a plan. Just don't assume that everything is going to, it's kind of like one of those like expect the worst, but hope for the best kind of thing. So have a plan, know where to go, know how to get there, and, have a family reunification plan in place and know exactly where you are, so that if you do get trapped or if you're injured or if you're unable to move, that you can give accurate, specific details of your exact location. I talk about that What Three Words app, which is great for things like this, because while you may know that you're at a particular park, rescue teams will need to know where exactly you are in that park. And the second thing is to, if you see a threat, act. If you just hear about a threat, think, because what we don't want to do is make decisions that will make us feel safer, but which will actually have a detrimental effect to our security. Number three, know the difference between when to evacuate and when to shelter in place. If the threat is outside of the event, you want to stay inside where it's safe. But much like if there's a fire in a building, you don't want to stay inside where the fire is, you want to get out. And then the final thing, and perhaps this is really the most important, is just to understand that one of the unintended consequences of all of us being locked down in quarantine for this year-long pandemic is that our threshold for tolerance is probably at an all-time low. We have, human interaction is a very perishable skill, and a lot of us are out of practice. And so a lot of us still are carrying around some of that angst and turmoil and anxiety that, we're just a bit short fused. And to, if maybe we just have a little more compassion for others and have a willingness to help others when we see them in distress, sometimes those are the very first steps to saving ourselves. So while I don't think that we should live in fear, I do think that we need to have a healthy sense of skepticism, a moderate dose of vigilance, and a willingness to participate in our own protection so that we can continue to enjoy experiencing these live events and travel and vacations, what have you, but also ensure that we're doing them in the safest way possible.
Yeah, those are great points. Really, really helpful. I think, I echo your sentiment with, having a little bit of compassion and all of that. I read a sign on a business the other day that said, before you enter this establishment, check your energy and make sure that you're bringing a neutral, positive energy into the space. And I think that was a good rule of thumb for all of us right now, regardless of where we're going.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, one of the quotes I have in the book is that, sometimes our willingness to help another is the first step to saving ourselves. And when we talk about, situational awareness, and when we talk about being, aware of our surroundings, what we're really talking about is, because people are always like, well, I'm not tactically trained. I'm not a military combat veteran. I'm not a security secret squirrel Mission Impossible type guy. I don't know anything about situational awareness. But all of us know about mindfulness. All of us know about being aware of our not just our surroundings, but being aware of ourselves. And if we can just use that mirror on ourselves first before we apply that aspect ratio to the rest of the world, sometimes just knowing who we are and how we are will help to reframe the course of action for how we are interacting with our environment, our behaviors, our thoughts, our actions, how we feel, how we act, how we convey. And, just like how, bad guys don't go after the strongest of us, they go after the weakest. The more that we can promote a positive energy and a positive protective posture to ourselves, the more we can immediately dissolve a lot of what would otherwise be volatile circumstances before they even escalate into that kind of unfavorable action.